Hey everyone, thanks again for tuning into Sin's Workshop. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Alright, let's get into it. Today we're going to be talking about How to Break an Evil Curse by Laura Morrison. I have to say, I really enjoyed this one. I did have some issues with it, but those are really few and far between, and we'll talk about that. But How to Break an Evil Curse is, it has been described as a cross between The Princess Bride and Monty Python. If you're familiar and love either of those, I think you're really going to like this movie. Novel. Although it would make a good movie. But anyway, it follows Princess Juliana. She has been cursed by her father's ex-best friend and evil wizard, Farland. Yeah, Farland. What kind of a name is that for an evil wizard? I think that just kind of gives you an insight into the direction the story took. So it did that, and lost my train of thought. Oh, right. Follows Princess Juliana. So she's been cursed, right? She cannot let sunlight touch her skin or else she will die instantly. That is the curse. Now, every curse there is a counter curse in the land of fertility. Let's just think about fertility because that's how I pronounced it in my head as I was reading it. So every curse has a counter curse. The counter curse is she has to fall in love, or she has to fall in love with someone who has lived their entire life on the sea, who is part of a traveling theater troupe, who plays the banjo, harpsichord, and there was another instrument and I forgot what it was. And is allergic to asparagus. Yeah, that's the most ridiculous thing in the world, right? It's absurd. That's what this novel's really good at. It's being absurd. There are a lot of absurdities to the novel, and that's what made it really engaging for me as a reader. I started reading this book in the car, and I'm like, honey, do you mind if I read out loud? And he's like, sure. We were on our way to dinner. We just dropped our son off with the in-laws. And I'm reading it, and we were both laughing within the first page because it's funny. It's so funny. It's so campy. Now, I will say this. Princess Bride, I've seen that movie probably 1,000 times in the course of my life. Monty Python. I've never watched Monty Python completely. I've seen bits and pieces here because everyone at my college was super obsessed with it. I went to Emerson College, and everyone there was just, in my freshman year, just like, Monty Python. And I was just like, I'd never heard of it. I know. Gasp. Who knew? Me, not familiar with something. But, and it's not like it's even something new. It's something I should have been familiar with. I've seen bits and pieces that I have seen I did think were funny. It's campy. I will say this. The glimpses are campy, but I like camp. I like campiness. It's probably why I really enjoy Happy Death Day, because that's pretty campy. But I love campy. I am a huge fan of camp. Don't get me wrong. And I think it worked in favor of this story because it's set, you really do get this classic fairy tale setting of medieval Renaissance type era. My husband would totally be like, those are not the same. And he's right, they're not the same. But that's the kind of atmosphere that's created in this story. A lot of people combine medieval and Renaissance a lot, but they are two different eras, and there are a lot of distinctions with each era, but we're not gonna talk about that. But this novel does have a nice blend of this Renaissance type atmosphere and a medieval-esque type atmosphere. So that's the kind of world we are in. Very classic fairy tale rendition world. Now, this is what really struck me. when Warren's sister, Warren is the counter curse, by the way, his sister Corinne, she's like, dude. I was just like, dude. I say dude a lot. And I'm like, man, come on, man. And I'm like, yo. And I, I really do think this novel was probably written for me. Because I talk like that. My mom says I kind of sound like a hippie sometimes. But in a good way. She says it endearingly. Because she's all for me being a hippie. Like classic, stereotypical 1960s hippie without the drugs. But that's the kind of lingo that's in this story. People are saying, hey man, or dude, or not cool man. You know, people saying things like that throughout the novel. It doesn't come off as weird. It seems to fit within this world that Laura has built. And I appreciate that. I like how it fits. You would think, you know, with the atmosphere that's created, that modern day lingo or jargon is going to feel awkward in the context of the story. But it actually worked out very well for the story, and I really do think it added to that campiness, it added to that charmingness of the story. And it really did give the characters a lot of voices and a lot of characterization, a lot of personality. That's what I thought was really good. There's so much personality from the thug who wants to be a writer and he wants to write true crime, to the pirate McManly man who is in love, who reads romance novels and is trying to win the female doctor Jane's heart by joining the revolution. There's a lot of humor in their voices, and then there's also humor in the Enchanted Raven's Blood. Yeah, you heard that right. Enchanted Raven's Blood also has its own personality. And I liked it. There's, like I said, lots of humor went into writing the story, and I think it does lend itself to be a really engaging read. Now, I think that there are parts of this novel that would work really, really well as an audiobook. Okay, so as you're reading the story, there are footnotes. You don't really see footnotes a lot of the time in stories. In fact, one time in one of my creative writing courses, I tried to do the footnote technique. It was not well. I think I got a C on that short story. But footnotes are typically reserved for nonfiction. I was going to say in autobiographies, but autobiographies kind of fall into that nonfiction genre. So the reason being is they can be distracting. You are distracting the reader. You are having this little marker be a stop point, and then they have to go look for it. Now, I didn't do that. And I think if you do that, it's going to be a little distracting for you because you have to stop, go to the end of the chapter, read it, and then go back. I think that is like as a stopper. You know, it does create this barrier between you. But they're funny. Don't get me wrong, they are funny. And that's why I think they work well as an audiobooks. Because when I was reading the story, you know, I read it, footnote, I completely ignored it, waited till the end of the chapter, read the footnotes. But then I'd have to go back. See, there's a lot of back and forth when it comes to footnotes. And I think that's why they are not always received well by readers, because you are creating this sort of barrier. Don't get me wrong, they are funny. I definitely do not say skip them, because they are funny, but they're not always necessary for the story. A lot of the, like, I would say 85% of the time, they are worth reading because they do add something to the story. The other 15% is just because they're funny. But they are a stop point. But that's why I think it would work well as an audiobook, because when you, especially an unabridged audiobook, the reader, they can be reading, and then they can read the footnote, and then go back to the story. And I don't think that that's going to break up the pacing at all. And I feel like if I read this book out loud to my son when he gets older, because I do have plans of buying this book, because I think it's a great book to share with kids. Not saying it is for kids. I think it's a great book for a parent to share with their child because it is fun. It has a lot of humor to it. I think it is intended for young adult, middle grade audience. Um, but like I said, Princess Bride, Monty Python, those are more adult. It does have a lot of, I guess, adult humor in them, as well as humor that it's like any. You've seen those cartoons, that have lots of adult humor in them, but they don't really go woo over the kids' heads. But the kids that still find the context funny, that's what this novel is kind of like. But it is intended for a younger audience. You can read it and enjoy it. I'm 29 years old and I loved it. I thought it was incredibly enjoyable. I just also think it is a family read as well, and it is a very appropriate family read. I thought that's what was hilarious about it. So I think when I get this book, whenever that happens, like when I have money to spend again, I think I'm going to do it the same way an audiobook would. I'm going to read it and then read the footnote and then go back to the story because I think it's going to work well. I really do think it's going to work well. For me to read it to my son so that he gets the most enjoyment out of it. So, it's a fun story. It's pretty campy, but it is hilarious, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So once again, this was How to Break an Evil Curse by Laura Morrison. And they get 4 stars from me. Like I said, it's really funny. It's just those footnotes that disrupt the pacing that kind of prevent me from giving it that 5th star. I think if I had listened to it as an audiobook, it would have gotten a solid 5 stars. So I do recommend this novel. I do recommend checking it out if there's an audiobook version of it, because I think it's going to be hilarious. I mean, the story itself is hilarious, but as they're reading it and then talking about these footnotes as they're reading, I think it's going to really lend itself to be something really incredible. So on that note, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Please don't forget to support me by liking this video and subscribing to my channel and sharing it with all your book-loving friends. I hope, once again, you all have a great rest of your day. And as always, happy reading!